Hello, I'm Pastor Joe, and I want to welcome you to 2-Minute Tuesdays Together, where we are continuing our series on understanding the Bible. So in our last video, we moved from the Old Testament into the New Testament. And we began with the first section of books, first division, if you will, subdivision of books in the New Testament, and that's the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, the Gospels tell the story of Jesus Christ, his birth, his life, his ministry, his death, resurrection, ascension. They have the whole story of Jesus. And those Gospels serve as a foundation for everything else in the New Testament. They serve as a foundation for our lives as Christians. So today we're going to turn our attention to the next important subdivision, and that is what follows the Gospels. You got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then you have the book of Acts. To be more precise, it is the book of the Acts of the Apostles. Though we typically don't say the book of the Acts of the Apostles, we just call it the book of Acts. So what is the book of Acts? What is it about? Well, let's get 2 minutes on the clock and we'll talk about it. Now, regardless of the name used, whenever we turn to the book of Acts, there's a couple of things we need to know. One is the book of Acts really is basically a history book. It is the history of the formation of this young Christian community. We would call that the church. It is the beginnings, really, if you will, the formations of the church. We also need to understand that the book of Acts is basically a continuation of and a sequel to the Gospel of Luke, written by the same people. But in Acts, we see the recounting of the early history of the Christian faith from after Jesus was crucified and was raised. The apostles go about their preaching and their teaching throughout the land, and that's what we see captured here. And it captures really the early growth of the Christian movement, and we see how it spread from area to area. One of the main figures that we see in the book of Acts is a man named Paul. Now, when we first meet Paul, he's actually known by usually the name of Saul. And he is the number one enemy of the young church. And he's out to destroy the church. And in fact, when we really encounter him, he is on his way to Damascus with papers to arrest Christians. And while he's on his way, God gets hold of him on that road and converts him, and he becomes a missionary. He becomes the greatest evangelist that the church has ever known, and he becomes known as Paul. So when you hear about Saul and Paul, know that they're the same people. So if you want to know what happens after Jesus' resurrection, after his ascension, what happens to Christians and to the young church, turn to the book of Acts. And so what I want to challenge you to do is to spend some time flipping through the book of Acts. Look at the major stories. Look at the major people. There's some exciting things that go on from the day of Pentecost and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit to Saul's conversion, and you just see this rapid growth of the church. It's exciting. So look at it and be amazed at what God is doing. Well, I want to thank you for joining me and watching this video. I hope that you have found it helpful and educational. I also hope you'll go back and look at some of the earlier videos in this series. Please I encourage you, if you like the video, hit like. Share this video with others. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you next time.